This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
For Flux Sake is brought to you by us, Rose and Matt at Ceramic Materials Workshop. We created Ceramic Materials Workshop to be a place online to learn how clay and glazes really work, with none of the myths, rumors, and nonsense you may have heard out in the public. We've spent years working and researching and teaching at the best ceramic schools in the world to put together a revolutionary ceramic materials education. If you like what you've learned from us on For Flux Sake, you'll love what we have to show you at ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Dip your toes in with short courses like our online workshops, or dive headfirst into our full classes on glaze chemistry, clay bodies, and the ever-perplexing crystalline glazes. All at ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Join us and we'll change your studio forever. Now back to us.
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze. Well, hello, Matt and Rose.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, Kathy.
You know, it's so good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too, because we can see each other here, but everyone else is just listening to us.
I know, we're lucky in that way. I mean, I get to see you in your little Zoom rectangles, and then at work, you know, I know we run the glaze class at Harvard Ceramics, so I get to see you in another rectangle occasionally. And, you know, beyond that, now I get to see you in bigger rectangles because I notice you guys are like hot to trot on YouTube. What's up with that?
Roses.
You two have so much time on your hands. You can do a YouTube
So
channel.
much time. I got time to twiddle my thumbs and record a video.
So seriously, the set looks awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
It is amazing. Matt did an amazing job. And what? It only took 2 years to build, and then to refine it about another 6 months, and then another 3 months to get me in front of the camera.
Did he have to like leave a trail of Twinkies or something up to the set to lure you in?
That was a whole thing, believe me, of convincing Rose just how charming and wonderful and inspirational she is.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Am
Absolutely.
I don't know. Can you see I'm turning red?
Oh, you are actually.
Rose.
No, this is so. Tell me like how it works. Is this like to go along with the ceramic materials workshop material, or?
Well, it's to go along with what we do as research. We talk about things we do in the lab, testing we do in the lab, fun subjects. We have one on glow-in-the-dark glazes coming up. We have absorption. We talk about
just even how to batch a
bunch of
glaze
stuff.
test. That was Rose's first video out. And you know, the reality is what we do with Ceramic Materials Workshop is it's online video education. That's what we've always been, and it's historically been more of a traditional class because there's so much information with glazes. And what we realized is that we wanted to be able to get more bite-sized pieces of educational content out there that a lot of people don't know, or they sort of hear about a thing. Like we have one on clay body absorption. Everybody hears that and the clay companies publish it, but people don't often know just how to test it. So we did a whole video on just how you actually do an absorption test and what the numbers mean and sort of how to interpret what you see and all that. So it was really just a way of doing that. And then just, making it a set that makes Rose look amazing.
She doesn't need a set to do that.
No,
Oh,
but good lighting does go a long
Right.
way.
But the color is great. And then, depending on what accessories Rose has chosen for the day, I think it
aren't
just
those fun?
makes
I
it
love
pop,
those.
girl.
Yes.
So proud of you. So proud of you. But really, I mean, like what you're doing, I think is for someone like me, being able to see a visual is so helpful because I can read that article in one of our periodicals over and over again, but about an absorption test, let's say, but to be able to have that. And then also you're providing such a great educational tool, that teachers can use in the classroom. I mean, it's just awesome.
Yeah. And that's always been one of our goals because, as people that work in a subject of materials education, that has always been a written subject. You read the book, you read the magazine article. And I certainly cherish that as a piece of information, but there's a reason why we do online video and we do podcasts and we're doing YouTube now because we're a visual medium. And I think people like to have the book in front of them, but I think they learn better when you've got a person that they can watch and see do it and follow the steps visually and with the audio and with the beautiful Rose being such a great teacher that I think it really brings the package together. And then, we just put it together. Building of it did take a really long time because we wanted it to look amazing. Like we wanted it to look like a movie. So yeah, it was building the set and doing lights and cameras and then
microphones and
then the editing and the graphics and all this type of stuff. And
yeah,
I was going to say it's not just us because we have two other people that work on the videos. We've got our assistant Megan, who's our full-time digital person who does the filming with Rose. Yeah, and they put together the final scripts, and they put together. Megan does all the graphics, and then my dad, who people here on the podcast have heard, my dad's retired, and we taught him video editing because he was looking.
Oh
for
my goodness, really?
Yeah,
that man is not allowed to retire. You do have that guy working.
It was his choice.
It was his choice.
He lives with us. He's got an apartment at our house, and he wanted to do something to help with the business, and he didn't match glazes. So we said we'll keep you clean. We'll get you some classes on Premiere Pro and how to edit video.
Matt's dad, if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you need help, just direct message me. So y'all, how long does it actually take to make, say, a 5-minute video?
Oh,
do you have a sense of it, or is it like asking somebody how long does it take to make a mug?
Well, so like from the scheme of things, so like Megan and I review the script, we edit the script, and then we read through the script at least 3 times. And then, so that's like maybe 4 hours. And then recording it is Megan has a shot list that she goes through. We do A cam, B cam, and C cam. And that's a few hours worth of video. And then post-production is
oh my gosh,
probably a few more hours,
and then it goes through Megan, and then it goes through
graphics, and then subtitles,
color correction.
It's pretty amazing. It's probably a good 2 weeks of work if you total all those hours together, but
spread out. I mean, it can, some of these they've taken a couple of months to get through all the process. And it's what it takes. We want it to look amazing, we want it to sound amazing, and we want people to really just go for the information, because the prettier it is and the better it looks, the more people are sort of open to the information. So we're super proud of it.
It's got kind of a Bill Nye the Science Guy meets Mystery Science Theater vibe to it.
Yeah, it is certainly a lot of fun. And I do have a good time doing it, especially with Megan, and she is amazing. She makes it fun, especially for me, who doesn't want to be in front of the camera. So, you got to make it fun in order to make it worth it. So.
Wow. Well,
And you
I
make
could-
it great, Rose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
And
just show up with fun stuff.
Right on. Well, I could compliment Rose all day, but I have a quota that I've gone way surpassed
Oh.
on Matt. So we're going to have to move along here. So, all right, y'all, let's get to our questions. We have our first question today coming in from Jamie from Las Vegas asking about unlabeled materials.
Hi, Matt, Rose, and Kathy. I am Jamie calling you from Las Vegas. I'm a furniture maker, but I have been making tile in my small ceramic studio here for, about 30 years. I put a lot of tile into the furniture that I build. And I have a question for you about unmarked glaze chemicals. I bought a complete studio from a potter that had passed away here. Probably about 10 years ago. And, luckily for me, she was a little bit of a hoarder. So she just had tons and tons and tons of equipment and chemicals and all sorts of things that are great to add into someone's studio. But there are a ton of chemicals, colorants that the labels on them have faded too badly for me to read anymore. Now, some of them I can identify, so I can look at a bag and pretty much figure out what's copper carbonate or maybe what's cobalt, and I can even run some small glaze tests. But I don't know how to identify a bag of white stuff, white powder. I'm thinking that it's silica, but it just looks exactly like some of the other glaze ingredients that I have. So I'm wondering if you have a way for me to test or figure out what some of these ingredients are without me having to do a ton of tests. And I know what Matt's going to say. I do a million tests every day, so just go for it. But, I'm busy doing other things, and I just need to identify maybe 10 or 15 things, and wondering if it's just simple as, putting a mixture of it and adding it into a firing with my next tile firing and seeing what happens. So I hope you can give me some information about that. Thanks, you guys. I love the podcast. I've been catching up on it because I've only recently discovered it, and it's fabulous. So thanks for your help. Bye-bye.
So Jamie's busy, and Matt, you've been sitting around all day eating bonbons, as we've established, making Rose do all the work.
It's true. It's true. It is just the burden of being me, of having all the time in the world to just test everything.
So I'm dying to hear the answer to this one. Because I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't
I don't
dare
think
take
Jamie
a chance.
wants to hear my answer.
Oh,
You might want to give Jay-Z yours because
Okay, Jamie, think about the time you are going to spend on testing these materials. And think of the time it would be to save you if you just got rid of them.
mm-hmm. Envision yourself getting into the car.
Envision
all the time you could save.
Now, I will say, under duress, because Rose is staring into my soul at the moment, this is much like I think 4 different locations and ages of cables we have stored around our house.
Oh, Should we talk about this? I don't know about that. That's not really ceramic related, is it?
It is not ceramic related, but this is the interpersonal relationship of, I have the tubs of cables that have gone through our life, and every time I think we move, I just take all the cables and I put them into an older tub, and then they go deeper into the memory hole. But it is the constant debate of Rose will see me going through the most recent tub of cables and going, you are wasting your time. Just go get one that works. And I'll spend like 3 hours looking for the right connection. And so Rose is
just
not
3.
wrong.
I think you probably like hide in the basement sometimes and add a little more.
Hey, what? You have to admit, like 2 weeks ago, I went into a drawer, put my hand in there, and pulled out exactly the old cable that I needed. It happened. probably for the first time in my life. I got
Wow.
exactly.
First time ever.
Should have bought a lottery ticket that day. Yeah.
But from a material standpoint, it depends on how specific Jamie needs to get, and that's the real problem. Are there some simple tests that you can do to figure out what things are? Yeah. As they said, the colored things are really easy. If you go to Glazes got, and there's a material section, they've got pictures of all the different colorants, and the colorants tend to not be white, so you can generally go by those. There are some variations. We've been struggling in our studio recently that we have recently gotten 3 different colors of cobalt carbonate. We've gotten a purple one, a pink one, and a lavender one. So that can be a little bit confusing, but they're within the same color family. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So those are pretty easy to identify. And you already said that. So that's pretty easy. Everything else does come down to white powders. And so this is where it comes down to the question of the worth of your time. There is one warning as well with those old studios. I mean, we get contacted, many times a year with the same situation. And our answer is always no, because A, the time that it's going to take. B, if stuff's really badly labeled, especially with older materials, there may be lead in there that you don't know. And
it could be a discontinued material that you're testing for. And then what if you run out? You can't replace that.
You're never going to figure out what
And
it is.
I've cleared uranium out of 2 studios in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I didn't have kids.
And thanks for not giving it to Matt.
Rose will let me have uranium.
No.
I didn't want to see.
I just wanted to see if we'd get a cat with another tail out of it, but she won't let me have the uranium. But so what are the tests? The most direct test, it does take some effort though, that I always say is take a glaze that is simple, like a cone 10 glaze that has 4 ingredients or a cone 6 glaze that has 5 ingredients. And what I would do is I take that glaze and I make it using the new material in place of each of the existing materials. So usually a 4 recipe glaze will have a feldspar, an alkaline earth, a kaolin, and a silica. So I'll make one where the new material is the feldspar, and one where the new material is the alkaline earth, and one where it's silica, and one where it's kaolin. And then see which version of the glaze behaves the same. That'll give you a generic knowledge of, is that the material? Some of the other materials you can identify by the naked eye, but it can be a little bit tricky. Kaolins, if you mix it together with water, just a little bit so it's pasty, it'll hold its shape. So that, like when you squeeze it in your hand, it'll hold its shape. What kaolin it is beyond that, I don't know, but that generally means it's kaolin. That's contrasted to, like, if you take feldspar or silica or whiting and you mix them with water to the point where they hold a paste and you squish it in your hand, when you open up your hand, it'll just like run down again and it'll sort of smooth out. So that's an indication as to whether or not something's kaolin. There are little things that you can do if you think something is whiting. If you've got some acid, hydrochloric acid, unfortunately, is the best of one. Dripping some hydrochloric acid on your calcium carbonate will bubble like hell.
Jamie,
I'm just saying it does work.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. You need a fume hood. You need gloves. Come on.
Who doesn't want to play with hydrochloric acid? Ugh. Rose doesn't let me have any fun, you guys. No uranium. No hydrochloric acid.
No.
Not fair. She wants to get rid of my cables. It's not fair. But yeah, it really does come down to, you need to just try them in a recipe, and then see what matches that behavior. But it's going to take some testing. Or you can send them up for chemical analysis. That's going to cost you like $150 a sample. That's not worth it. But Rose is kind of right.
And they don't even. So if you send it out for chemical analysis, they'll give you the analysis, but it won't tell you what the material is.
Yeah, you're right. You're going to have to go back and then compare that chemical analysis to other materials that are the same. So if you're really desperate to use them, absolutely. If it's the colorants, you're fine. If there are stains, you're fine. But honestly, Rose. Okay, wait, hold on. Ben, can we stop recording? Because I don't want to have to say that Rose is right.
This needs to be on recording. Okay, hold on. Pause, everybody.
You guys, Rose is right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. We'll be ending it right there. No.
The end of the show. Matt, I can't go on anymore.
All right. But that is a good point. Let's pivot to another subject. And because we've got so many great questions, we have a question coming in from Ryan from Kentucky, who wants to know about atmospheric pots with glaze flaws, to sell or not to sell.
Hey, Matt and Rose. This is Ryan from Kentucky. As a fellow podcaster, I really appreciate you all sharing your technical expertise in our ceramic space with all of our listeners. So my question is about mid-range soda firing. So I typically fire everything cone 6 oxidation, and I'm getting more into the mid-range soda and wondering about the concerns I should be aware of with the variability that soda introduces. So whether it's more crazing on the surface, some of the kiln results are varied between cone 5, 6, 7, depending on where it is in the kiln. I'm using some glazes, some flashing slips. Given that my clay bodies are at a good absorption rate and fully vitrified, within that 0.5% absorption at that cone 6, what other considerations do I have to consider as I think about selling this to the public? Thanks so much and appreciate your all's insight.
I don't know. I love buying atmospheric pots, salt, soda, wood, whatnot. But
Yeah.
I feel like they kind of get a hard pass, like for having to adhere to the same, list of defects and what would keep you from
Yeah.
selling it. I almost feel like if I'm going to hold it and I can imagine my spoon grating across the inside of that bowl while I'm eating my Cheerios, that's on me. That's my choice as an adult to buy that or not.
Live dangerously. That's what it is. It's all about
Yeah.
the beautiful pots. I mean, come on. Let's all admit how superficial we are anyway. We just want the beautiful things.
Yeah, but he had a good point. I mean, he mentioned his absorption. That's good that it's below 0.5, and other flaws. I mean, he could get some different absorption, the lower and higher range of it, but I mean, get more crazing.
Yes.
What else?
Well,
I mean,
I think you're both right in that the chaos is a feature, not a bug. And that's sort of what people are doing with atmospheric firing. And so, does it matter? My bigger question is definitely, you said that Ryan, and shout out to Ryan. I know Ryan from the Wheel Talk podcast. We know that guy. Great show. Everybody should listen. The glazes concern me a little bit because of the way that the atmosphere is changing the chemistry of those glazes, possibly. I don't want to get too nerdy, but
what? I thought that was the whole point of this.
I know this is
kind of
going
our
to go
thing.
hard. This is going to go hardcore nerdy.
Oh, are we talking about molecules, atoms?
Yeah, we got to get into the chemistry of a little bit. So there is a concept out there called the flux ratio. All of our glazes have two fluxes, an alkali metal flux from the first column periodic table and an alkaline earth from the second column periodic table. And the proportion of those fluxes is the single most important concept in glaze durability. It is a huge deal. Now, I will put sub caveat on the caveat. There are some people out there that are screaming that I am wrong about this, and they on the internet, and they are wrong. Do not listen to those people. They are giving dangerous advice. I recently went through a full literature survey through the gospel Bibles, like Varshanea's Fundamentals of Inorganic Glasses, and they are in complete agreement with what I'm about to tell you, which is too much alkali metal flux is a problem. Okay, it is just going to create a glaze durability issue. Glazes will be weaker, substantially weaker, when you have too much alkali metal flux. What are the alkali metal fluxes? Lithium, sodium, and potassium. And so when you have a salt soda firing, you are literally dumping uncontrolled amounts of sodium into the kiln, and that is going to change the balance of the chemistry of those glazes. And that's just the reality of the situation. When people are asking me about, like, chemically, how do you model the behavior of a salt firing? I always say, just take your glaze recipe, plug it into a UMF calculator, and then add 50% soda ash to that glaze.
Just
and you're going to
dump some sodium in there.
I mean, yeah, that's what it is. And you want a lot because you're putting a massive amount of sodium into that kiln. And that's what you can predict what that glaze is going to do in the best case scenario. And again, not to get off on all the details of the chemistry, but like the numbers are going to get real ugly from a durability standpoint. That said, going back to Kathy's point of, like, it's also just what atmospheric firings are. One of those things is like, okay, so say you are making pots and chemically their durability is not predicted to be the greatest in the long term. The funny thing about an atmospheric pot is, are you really going to notice if the glaze starts to change over time? Probably not, because it was pretty funky to begin with. It's not really going to make a difference. It's like, you have a friend who doesn't have any tattoos. They get one tattoo. You're like, oh, tattoo. And then you have a friend who's like all covered. They get a new one. You just don't even notice it because it's already, it's just another one in the collage. And so, like, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I would be very cautious about the glazes that you're using when you dump the sodium on there. Because if there are some stability issues to begin with those, it might not be the best thing in the long term.
I haven't heard about people doing this in a while, but I'm sure they did. For a while, there was a lot of talk about Cone 1 soda, and I don't know much about that. Like, what clays were people using, and were those fired high enough to be durable? I mean, is it producer Ben, a terracotta warrior? Were people doing that with terracotta?
Yeah, definitely. And I've actually been researching this recently. Cone 1 and Cone 3 are really common because it's about the hottest you can fire terracotta before it turns into a puddle. But because it's terracotta, you're never going to fully vitrify. So it's dense, but not vitrified. And a lot of the pots I have are of that range are beautiful. But if you put that beside like an industrial restaurant ware pot, not durable. Right. They all have chips, they break, they crack. It's just part of the deal.
I will say, I can't, everybody's using all sorts of different clays out there, but you definitely can get a vitrified red body at Cone 4. That is definitely a thing that can be out there. I'm not saying that most clays are doing that, but I've made and worked with clays that are vitrified at Cone 4. Again, the colder you fire, the less vitrified it's going to be. But you are absolutely right. You do not want to go over Cone 4 with those red bodies because they'll start to bloat, and that can be a problem.
Puddles.
Yeah.
Puddles.
Do you know when with what you've been looking at, Ben, do you know if people are adding anything to the soda? Because I know that that's not uncommon when you're going at lower temperature soda, like mixing in some borax or something like that.
Yeah, I always heard people talk about borax specifically. I don't know anyone that's regularly making production wares, though, that does that. Back in the day, I was doing with pearl ash, which is just soda ash, but potassium. As opposed to sodium, and no difference. Like, there was nothing. You could test a lithium, but that shit's so expensive now that, like, you're never going to do that.
Not anymore.
Yeah. It's like worse than your cobalt habit.
Right.
All right. Well, actually, that leads us into a connected theme here with our next question. Marama from New Zealand wrote in and asked about something, in regard to vitrification and making sure that tableware is safe. They asked, I'm a potter making wheel-thrown tableware. I fire my stoneware to vitrification, Cone 8, and I've become obsessed with making my own rock glazes after a retired potter. This is why I don't like reading people. Retired potter gave me their old ball mill. I test my glazes from home as thoroughly as I can, but I'm aiming for restaurant-worthy durability. Is there a practical way to test for that without sending every rock out for analysis? Please tell me about rock glazes. I know nothing about this. This is crazy. What's going on in New Zealand? What's happening?
They're a real grind. Terrible joke. It honestly is actually the truth that the problem is that they take a massive amount of grinding.
Yeah, energy, lots of energy.
Lots of energy. And a ball mill, like, will a ball mill do it? Yeah, but most people who really want to get into it, they're going to use a jaw crusher to really take down, and then a mill to get it down to a fine enough size. You know, I had someone contact me not long ago about saying that they were hoping to put together a gallery show about wild materials. And they said, you know, I've got all these people who are doing wild clay bodies. Do you know somebody who's doing wild glazes? And my answer is like, there are definitely not as many who are making wild clay, because wild clay, you go out, you dig up a bunch of it, you know, you sieve it, and then it's clear. The wild glazes, there is so much grinding going on to get those materials down to a consistency, because that, I cannot underemphasize what a big deal that is.
I would hope that they have like a solar array to offset the electrical costs.
Right? Well, what are they getting from, like, is there something unique about grinding your own rocks? Then if you I mean, I love a cost savings, but I mean that's
I know this is not cost saving.
Yeah,
No,
it's definitely the contrast of your personal time cost versus the effort put in. You know, I think that the number one thing is that there is a level of variability that people find exciting. You know, it's always this critique, and we're talking about ceramic materials, that people are like, oh, you know, I'll never forget. There's a guy back on the old ceramics internet who's kind of a bully, who would go around and critiquing that everything that was not, you know, like a Shino fired T-bowl, he would call them toilets. And that's just another toilet. That's another toilet. He was such a clay-splaining gatekeeper. But you know that there are all these people that they have this philosophical impression of the chaos that they want from ceramics, and that's all well and good. But we need consistency. You know, honestly, y'all are probably listening to this podcast right now because Kathy and Rose are hilarious. But then at the end of it, trying to eliminate some of the inconsistency in your ceramic process. And the reason why we use the materials that we do, the industrial materials, is because they are consistent, and that alleviates a lot of headaches. And so the rocks that you're finding in the wild, like, they're generally going to be forms of the same types of things that we're getting industrially. They are just incredibly inconsistent. And if you like it, then it's a feature, not a bug. But there's a level of chaos that comes with it.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
I mean, you can identify. I mean, there's people who identify rocks. One of my sisters is she's a jeweler, and she can identify rocks like there's no tomorrow. Like, as she looks at it, she's like, oh yeah, that's so and so. Like, how do you know that? Like, she's like, oh yeah, you know, I just know it. It's, you know, picking it up here and there. But you can identify them, and you can do that. It just takes a massive amount of energy.
Yeah, a lot of research
to process it. I mean, you're talking about screening, you're talking sieving, milling. Milling itself can be hours and hours, and then if you overmill it, you shot yourself in the foot.
And you've also gone deaf from the sound.
Yeah.
Of
yes, definitely.
In a ball mill for that long.
Hopefully they have it outside.
Yeah.
And your neighbors hate you.
The identification, though. So as Rose knows this, but I spent my summer reading geology textbooks. And very exciting.
Yes.
And I'm
So
going to
exciting.
misquote exactly the number, but I believe one of the books was talking about there are roughly 4,000 different species of rock on the planet. So, you know, when you go to the gems and minerals room, those are just the pretty ones, but there are 4,000 different major rock categories. And there are something like 1,200 different silicate materials, which are the basic things of what we use. And yeah, knowing what this is versus that is versus, you know, a feldspar that's got other inclusions and all that. Can you identify the materials? Yes, but we need to get them into the grouping. We started off with the first question today talking about, you know, the four major groups of materials. There's going to be a feldspar, an alkaline earth, a kaolin, and a silica source. You need to know what you're using if you're trying to make the durable glazes that we're talking about here. And again, getting the right ingredients into the right role of a glazed recipe, that becomes the most important fact. So if you're going at it by naked eye, yeah, it's kind of make friends with a rock hound, talk to a local geology professor, buy them cookies and beer, and, hopefully they'll be able to help you identify what you've got going.
And a pick too. I hear they like rock picks. Yeah.
Okay.
I do have to say one more thing though, going back to Rose's other point about the milling. We often don't take mesh sizes very seriously, but mesh is how fine our materials are. And there's often an impression that different mesh sizes behave very differently. That is not true. Okay. The problem with different mesh sizes is the smaller a material is, the more evenly it will mix with the other materials. That's why we have to grind our materials and why we work with these powdered forms, because when you mix the materials together with water, you need them to be homogenized. So you need it to be evenly distributed so that you've got a feldspar particle next to a whiting particle, next to a kaolin, next to a silica, and that it's dispersed throughout the entire glaze. If the particles are not milled well enough, you don't get homogeneity. So that creates two problems. One, it will melt unevenly, which, as I said, that might be the feature and not the bug, but it makes my skin twitch. The other thing is when materials are bigger, okay, when you have a bigger mesh size, it takes more time for that particle to melt in the firing. Okay, so there's often this impression, like say you've got nepheline cyanide, and you can buy 200 mesh nepheline cyanide, and you can buy 600 mesh nepheline cyanide. They are the same rock, but oftentimes people will say like, oh no, the 600 melts more effectively or melts better. No, it doesn't. It melts itself faster, so that the rest of the time in the firing is more effective towards melting with all the other particles in the glaze. So making sure that you are milling to a very effective mesh size, definitely under 200 mesh, more ideally under 325 mesh, you're going to get better performance from those materials. But it's also going to eliminate some of the chaos that might be what you're going for. But if you're going for restaurant quality wear, you really need to make sure that your quality control is top notch.
Yeah, that point was kind of key, I think, in terms of the conversation. And like the first, question we got, it's really about how do you want to spend your time?
Mm-hmm.
And though I love spending my time with you two, we are going to have to bring this to a close.
Well, I got to go sort some cables. Keep Rose away from throwing them away.
Go sort some cables in the basement.
All right. Good luck with that. In the dark. All right. See you next time, y'all.
Later, Kathy.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week. And if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time, and when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system.